Every network called his return a routine programming decision. What happened inside that studio for 18 minutes told the opposite story. Kimmel's hand is already moving when the camera cuts to him. Not to the desk, not to the band, not to the audience, to a single printed page he is holding at arm's length, reading, nodding once, then setting face down on the desk without comment. The audience, which has been waiting 6 days for this moment, does not know yet what the page says. What they know is that Kimmel's face, in the 4 seconds before he looks up, has the particular stillness of a man who has decided, sometime in the 48 hours before this taping, that he is going to say every single thing he is thinking. That what was taken from him, 6 days of airtime, 6 days of silence enforced by a network under pressure from a federal regulator, threatened by a president who celebrated the enforcement, has clarified rather than diminished what he intends to do with the time he has left on this stage. He looks up, he finds the camera, and he says, "Well, I do tonight." 4 words. The audience erupts. But to understand why those 4 words freeze the room, why they travel across every platform by morning, why Trump posts about them within the hour, why a clip that is technically a punchline is treated by everyone who watches it as something closer to a verdict, we have to go back to the night it all started. September 15th, 2025. Charlie Kirk, the conservative political activist and media figure, has been killed. The nation is in the specific kind of shock that arrives when a polarizing public figure dies violently, when grief and politics cannot be separated, when every statement issued by every prominent person is read through the lens of what side that person occupies. Trump addresses reporters on Air Force One. He is asked about Kirk's death. He responds by discussing the ongoing construction of a new ballroom at the White House. This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. Kimmel says that night on air, "This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish." The clip travels fast. By midnight, it has been flagged by FCC Chairman Brendan Carr, who posts publicly that Kimmel's conduct is really, really sick, and announces that the commission is considering regulatory action against ABC and its parent company, Disney. By the following morning, Nexstar, which distributes ABC programming in dozens of major markets, has pulled the show from its affiliates. By Wednesday evening, ABC confirms Jimmy Kimmel Live is suspended indefinitely. Trump posts at 11:14 p.m. Great news for America. The ratings challenge Jimmy Kimmel Show is canceled. Then, congratulations to ABC for finally having the courage to do what had to be done. Then, Kimmel has 0 talent and worse ratings than even Colbert, if that's possible. Then, that leaves Jimmy and Seth, 2 total losers on fake news NBC. Their ratings are also horrible. Do it, NBC. 4 posts, 40 minutes. The President of the United States, in the late hours of a Wednesday night, cataloging the names of late-night comedians he once removed from American television. 6 days pass. Disney negotiates. Kimmel's team holds. The agreement reached on Monday has one condition, reported by a single unnamed source who delivers it in 9 words. Jimmy will say what Jimmy wants to say. Tuesday, September 23rd. The taping begins. Rewind to 30 seconds before the cameras go live. A senior ABC executive is stationed near the stage left corridor, not in the booth, in the corridor, where he can see the stage but cannot be seen easily from it. A floor director who has worked the show for 7 years notices him and makes a note, not in writing, but in the way experienced production staff make notes. Filed away, dated, preserved. The show's band is in position. The desk is set. The printed page is already on it. A production assistant who has worked the show since 2019 stands in the wings with her lanyard wrapped once around her fist, not swinging it. Then the light changes and Kimmel walks out. The applause that greets him is not the ordinary applause of a live television audience. It is 6 days of accumulated feeling finding the only available release. It is loud in the way things are loud when they have been held back, when the volume is not manufactured by an applause sign, but by people who have been waiting. Kimmel walks through it without raising his arms, without the wide-open gesture of a performer receiving ovation. He walks to the desk. He picks up the printed page. He reads it. He sets it down. He finds the camera. "Well, I do tonight." The page, he explains, is Trump's Truth Social post from an hour earlier, posted shortly before the taping while Kimmel was in makeup. The post: "I can't believe ABC fake news gave Jimmy Kimmel his job back. The White House was told by ABC that his show was canceled. He thought I was fired," Kimmel says. "He told the world I was fired. He was wrong, and he knows he was wrong. And yet here is the post." He holds it up once more, one beat, sets it down. He has no ratings. I do tonight. The room finds the exact frequency of laughter that exists at the border of comedy and something else. Kimmel does not wait in it. "I want to say something that is not a joke," he says, his voice dropping. Not lower in the theatrical sense, but lower in the way voices drop when the person speaking has something they need the room to stay quiet for. "What happened to this show last week was not about my comments. It was not about Charlie Kirk. It was not about ABC's standards. What happened was, the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, a man appointed by the sitting president, publicly threatened a broadcast network with regulatory consequences for content its host produced, and the network complied." He pauses, not for effect, the pause of a man making sure the sentence has landed completely before continuing. "That's not legal," he says. "That's not American. That is un-American, and it is so dangerous." The audience, which has been holding its breath, lets it out slowly, not in applause yet, but in the collective exhale of a room that has heard something it needed to hear said in the specific plain language it deserved. Then a door near the stage right curtain opens. She walks out steadily, a former FCC Broadcast Bureau attorney, 11 years at the commission. She reviewed the Carr statement about Kimmel's remarks when it was published. A public statement from a sitting FCC chairman calling a late-night host's content really, really sick and suggesting regulatory consequences, and she wrote a legal analysis, published under her own name, concluding that the statement was the most direct use of regulatory language to pressure broadcast content she had seen in her career. She brings that analysis with her. She stands at a microphone near the desk and reads a single paragraph from it. Chairman Carr's public statement constitutes what communications law scholars call a raised eyebrow action, an informal but unmistakable signal to a regulated entity that regulatory consequences may follow from content the government disfavors. The First Amendment prohibits the government from compelling a broadcaster to self-censor through the threat of regulatory penalty. What occurred in the week of September 15, 2025, is in this analysis a textbook violation of that prohibition. She sets the document down. She does not editorialize. She does not need to. The screen behind Kimmel changes. A timeline. The scaffolding, visible now in its entirety. Colbert calls the settlement a bribe. July 14th. The Late Show canceled. July 17th. Trump posts, Kimmel is next. July 18th. FCC issues equal time reinterpretation memo. January 2026. Kimmel's Kirk monologue. September 15th. Carr threatens ABC. September 16th. ABC suspends the show, September 17th. Trump celebrates. Same night, 4 posts, 40 minutes. The timeline does not require annotation. Each entry connects to the next with the logic of a structure that was designed to bear a specific kind of weight. "That's not a sequence of events," Kimmel says. "That is scaffolding. Someone built the mechanism before they needed to use it. The equal time memo came before my monologue. The threat came before the suspension. The celebration came before the network had even confirmed the decision." He touches the timeline on the screen. Scaffolding doesn't appear after a building collapses. It gets built before, so the collapse can happen on schedule. A man in the 4th row drops his head forward. A woman 2 rows behind him covers her eyes, not in distress, in concentration, the way people cover their eyes when they need to process something without visual distraction. A camera operator who has worked the show for 5 years keeps her lens on Kimmel's face and does not cut to the wide shot, because the wide shot is not where the story is. A second figure steps out. He is a former Disney regulatory affairs executive. He left the company 4 months ago. He attended the meetings between Disney's leadership and ABC's legal team during the 6 days of the suspension. The meetings where the decision to comply with Carr's pressure was made, unmade, and made again. He is not here to assign blame. He is here because he was in a room where a calculation was performed in real time. The specific calculation a media conglomerate performs when a federal regulator has the power to affect its broadcast licenses, its merger reviews, its spectrum allocations, and its relationship with the administration that controls all of those things. And he watched the calculation produce its result, and the result was 6 days of silence imposed on a man who had done nothing illegal. His voice holds. It holds in the specific way that voices hold when the person has rehearsed the sentences enough times that the rehearsal has become a kind of armor. "I want to be direct," he says. "The decision to suspend the show was not made because of Jimmy's comments about Charlie Kirk. It was made because of Brendan Carr's statement, and Brendan Carr's statement was made because of the president's post." He pauses. "In the meeting I attended, the phrase used was managing the relationship. Not protecting the audience, not upholding standards, managing the relationship. He looks at the camera. I'm done carrying that quietly. The lease on my silence just expired. The room breaks, not all at once. It moves the way real reactions move, starting in one section, spreading outward, building not to a peak but to a sustained level that holds, that refuses to resolve quickly because the people producing it are not responding to a cue. A woman in the center section stands, hands together, slow and deliberate. The man to her left follows, then the rows around them. The theater fills with the sound that Kimmel later describes in a podcast interview as the only time in 18 years of doing this job that I had to work to keep my face still. He works to keep his face still. He succeeds. He waits. When the room settles, he looks at the printed page on his desk, Trump's post, face down, where he placed it at the start of the broadcast. He turns it over, reads it once more, silently, sets it down again. He said the White House was informed by ABC that the show was canceled, Kimmel says. They weren't. The show wasn't canceled. The show is right here. He was wrong, and he posted it anyway, because he needed it to be true. He looks at the camera. That is the single most important thing I can tell you about the last 6 days. He needed it to be true. He posted it as if needing it made it so. And then I walked out here, and I said 4 words, and the 4 words were the only response that those 6 days required. He pauses. He has no ratings. I do tonight. At 2:41 a.m., a network's overnight desk receives an encrypted communication. No sender name. Hospital letterhead from a private facility in Lausanne, Switzerland, matching public registration records. The document references a patient seen under a private alias. The examination dates correspond to a gap in Trump's official schedule in late August 2025, a 4-day period his office described as executive rest time at a private location. The network's legal team spends 2 hours attempting to disprove the document. They cannot. A senior editor authorizes a single-paragraph confirmation of the document's existence and the team's inability to establish forgery. The segment airs at 6 a.m. Within 30 minutes, 3 other networks are covering the coverage. Trump posts at 7:03 a.m. 7 paragraphs. The capital letters arrive in the opening sentence. Witch hunt, total fake, sick and deranged appear in the first 3 paragraphs. A personal attack on Kimmel runs 5 sentences and manages across those 5 sentences to address talent, ratings, Disney's stock price, the radical left media machine, and what Trump describes as the worst, most dishonest show in the history of late-night television, possibly ever. Each paragraph is screenshotted by accounts on every major platform and placed beside the specific clip it responds to. On one side of every split screen, a desk, a timeline, 2 witnesses, and 4 words delivered with the precise calm of a man who knew the answer before the question was asked. On the other, 7 paragraphs that do not contain a single date, a single document, or a single counter-witness. The clip travels. By noon, it has cleared 9 million views. Not the full 18 minutes, the 4 words. Well, I do tonight. Removed from context, sent without caption, forwarded from account to account with no framing except the clip itself. It becomes the caption. It becomes the shorthand. It becomes the thing people type when they want to say, you thought you had won, and here is the evidence that you were wrong, delivered in the only register that matters, quietly, on camera, in front of everyone. ABC faces renewed FCC scrutiny in the weeks that follow. Disney's stock is discussed in relation to its regulatory exposure. Trump urges NBC to cancel Fallon and Myers by name. The Writers Guild letter to the New York Attorney General is joined by a second letter from the Directors Guild. The ACLU brief citing the Carr statement as a First Amendment violation enters the federal court record. 3 constitutional law scholars publish analyses within 48 hours. The show continues. Kimmel continues. Every night, in the specific voice he has used since September 23rd. Not comedy voice, not performance voice, but the voice of a man who has decided the only thing left to do is say the true thing plainly and let it accumulate. He names the pattern, the scaffolding, the mechanism, the calculation, the relationship being managed. He names it the way a person names something when they know the name itself is the act of resistance. If this changed how you see the gap between what power says and what power does, subscribe and watch it again. The details you missed the first time are the ones that matter most. Notifications on. Next one drops soon.